Welcome, welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. Are you ready to step into something new this year? Are you wondering what is it left inside of you that's unsung? Are you ready to sing a new song? I have a guest today that is going to light you on fire because he's lit the fire inside of me. And trust me, I was already a bonfire. So now I've got a forest fire raging. Welcome, welcome, Jake Platt to the podcast.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate you welcoming me onto your platform.
I want to tell you about how I happened to find you. I had a good friend, Cindy Opal, that I had known for a long time, but I hadn't seen her for about 10 years. And she had severe MS, in a wheelchair, struggling to make life work for her. Finances were tough. And she just was not living the life that she wanted to live. Well, I saw her again a couple months ago. She was like, "Who are you and what have you done with my friend Cindy?" I didn't even recognize her. She looked physically different. She was emotionally and mentally different. And finally I said, "Cindy, what the heck has happened to you?" And she said, "Well, have you ever heard of Jake Platt?" I said, "No, but I think I need to." And she said, "Well, he's been teaching me the Morph Method. And I'm like, "I've never heard of that." And she said, "Well, you should have him on your podcast." So Jake, here you are on my podcast.
Cindy's wonderful. I so appreciate her.
Just wonderful. All right. So let's start with giving my listeners a little bit of background about who you are and how you got to this point with the Morph Method.
Sure. Well, my career started off in the martial arts. So I started off as a Taekwondo instructor. I was 22 years old, opened up my own gym when I was 25. Dojang, it's what it's called. And so I started to, teach martial arts. And one thing that was apparent in the martial arts was there was a lack of strength and conditioning component. So I started studying strength conditioning with Paul Chek. I don't know if you know who that is. He's sort of
I don't, but I probably should.
Yeah, he's like the grandfather of core conditioning, I would say. He's the guy who brought those big Swiss balls, into
that I use between my legs and I come up and I love
like
those.
he was the first one to kind of get into all of that, and so
wow.
I became a Czech practitioner / Taekwondo coach, and one thing led to another. I started coaching people at a high level. I became the head coach for the Air Force. I was the assistant coach for the Olympic gold medalist Stephen Lopez for the 2004 Olympics. And essentially, I just excelled at a high level in coaching in the martial arts. And a lot of it was due just because I had a really good understanding of how the body works and what is needed in order for someone to perform at a high level. So I was really into human performance. And then that led me into the beginning stages of the CrossFit movement in 2007. So I opened up my first, I actually changed my Taekwondo center into a CrossFit gym. I was kind of done with all the high kicking and the dynamic kicking and teaching people martial arts. So I started getting into more of the fitness. And, early on in CrossFit, it had a really amazing holistic wellness piece that went along with it that a lot of people aren't really familiar with because they abandoned it pretty quickly once people started competing in the sport. They kind of lost sight of what the original intention was behind CrossFit, which was, balancing your body in all of its systems, making sure that you're focusing on recovery, making sure you're doing all of those intangibles that just weren't all that popular. People wanted to move, get fit, get strong, but they were missing out on key components that are important to have in a fitness program. So I chased after those medals as well. We won the CrossFit Games in 2009. I competed, as a coach in, many years. I've created 3 of the fittest masters in the world back in the early 2000, I think it was 11, 12, 13. And, and one of the big things that I really relied on more than anything else was good sleep, good nutrition, paying attention to your stress, all these
all
things.
those things that people don't want to focus on.
They don't want to focus on those.
They're happy to listen to you at the gym, but they're not interested in don't mess with my personal life.
Yeah, they think they're getting stronger when they're working out. And I'm like, no. You're getting stronger when you are resting and recovering. So I always try to present this, this outlook of like, hey, you got to put it all together. You got to create an ecosystem of health in your life. You can't be boozing it up on the weekends and expect to be, healthy. And you need your liver actually. And so, it kind of, counter to what a lot of people were actually doing for their fitness, and so I kind of transitioned out of CrossFit and got more into holistic wellness right around 2018ish, and started to develop my own programs. But then COVID came, shut our gym down. I sold my gym off and went online. And so, I just like everyone else, I had no idea how to do online business. And so I was just trying to figure out, I had no online presence at all. So I had to start from complete scratch. And, I built up a following of a few hundred followers over the course of the last couple of years. And, consequently, I've also been really dialing in, building out a new program called Morph Method.
Morph, I think that's a fitting word for it, right?
Yeah, it actually means transformation.
Yeah, because we are constantly, we think we have it, and then next thing we know, we are morphing that into something that's more individualized, customized to what works for us.
Yeah, and then I created an acronym out of Morph. It's mindful, organized routines that are practiced honestly, because I believe when you break that down, we want to be mindful, we want to be organized, we want to make sure that we are practicing routines in an honest way, because we are in our own way, and we have a tendency to be influenced by all those people around us. And we lose sight of what's important, and what's important to others may not be what's important to you. So you have to look into what is your inner truth, and why is it so important for you to be healthy. So I really wanted to kind of, get into the psychology, the life philosophy, and really help people understand that it's cognitive biases that are really ruling your life. And I say ruling and ruining your life. Because
amen to that. Yeah.
Because if you don't understand what they are and you're not aware of them, they'll lead you down a dark path. And one thing will, you'll be woken up one day with cancer, heart disease, diabetes, all these other things, because society and our culture and our family and our neighbors and our teachers are showing us, ways of doing life that are not to our advantage. So to me, it was like I wanted to kind of throw something out there that was based in common sense principles, science-based, evidence-based science. And, just something people can wrap their minds around and understand.
Yeah. Jake, do you remember before we started, I said to you, we have way more in common than I think either one of us realize. And I truly do believe that. I began my fitness journey in 2003, after my 50th birthday party.
Nice.
And I weighed 284 pounds.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's remarkable.
And I lost more than half my body weight without surgery, without pills, without injections, by morphing my life. And each step was for me this journey into more. I didn't just think, here is my elephant, get me a fork. You know what I mean?
Right.
And here's the thing about your just really incredible. I when I decided I needed to add strength and exercise to my routine, and it wasn't just about losing weight. It took me 6 years to do this, but in 2008, guess what? Guess what exercise routine I added to my life? Just guess.
I don't know.
What kind of a gym did you own?
CrossFit.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
And I became the CrossFit queen at age 56. Okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
That I just loved it. But then there was a point where, as I began to age, there were other pieces. I still use the CrossFit method in terms of, cardio and strength training going hand in hand, working together.
Sure.
But after a year and a half at that gym with all those 20-year-olds,
Yeah.
I decided I needed to develop my own routine. And so I just absolutely know without a doubt that sitting here with you are my next step.
Okay. All right. Let's do
I've
it.
been wondering what is my next step, and this idea of wholeness, that we're not just about physical or what I'm putting in my mouth or what I'm doing at the gym, but it's also what I'm putting in my mind. And I think that, as I read through your website, Jake, was absolutely the final piece to put in place that I knew and I know transforms lives. So let's talk now about this concept of wholeness. And
well,
it's what sets you apart.
I think the key message for me to everyone is that don't let all of the messaging in the world keep you from seeing the magic of life and looking at yourself as this magical creature that is connected to God, the universe, nature, to one another, and how, we reduce our lives into these roles that we play in life. And you have to find a way to break through the noise and tap into that, that magic, because everything and everyone around you has lost touch with it. And you have to find it. You have to find it for yourself. What does it mean for you to find it? And I think that's really found when you start to focus on your health, because your health and your life are synonymous. They're one and the same. So, when you start to focus on your health, the grass is greener, the sky is bluer, and things are more magical than they were before. And it just, a lot of times people think they're healthy and they don't know what health really is until they start to get their mind healthy, because we are all connected through relationships with one another, relationships with ourselves, relationships with nature, relationships with God. And through our relationships is where we make sense out of the world. And, we have to be careful about allowing toxicity to manifest itself inside of us. And toxicity could be in the forms of thoughts, feelings, people, that are influencing us, society that is influencing us, water, air, there's, sitting for too long is a toxicity.
Yeah.
And, so our habits, our behaviors. And so you really want to kind of think about the first step of getting healthy as detoxifying your life. So how do you detoxify your life is like the first phase. Because why would you want to take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back? Why not just take 3 steps forward? Detoxify everything so you don't have anything holding you back. You don't have anything pushing you, making you older than you need to be. You don't have anything you don't have any brakes on the system. You don't have any drag on the system. So really you want to kind of think about being free and clear from whatever stressors you possibly, self-inflicted stressors, so that you can inflict good stress onto your body, because good stress is good for you, bad stress is bad for you.
I love this idea of detoxifying your body, and not just going through some physical cleanse, but really detoxifying your body. What are kind of the first steps as you step into detox?
Well, you have to, first of all, I think that you need to think about how you're being impacted by your relationships, and that's like the beginning of my second book. I'm starting to write my second book, which is the Relationship Detox. And it's really not just about relationships with other intimate partners, but it's relationships with yourself as well. What are these cognitive biases you got going on in your mind, in your life story, in your narrative, that is keeping you stuck, that is having a drag on the system? Because, if you think a certain way, you're going to be a certain way, and you're going to act a certain way. So really your thoughts command where you are in life, what you're doing in life, because your thoughts create emotions. Your emotions have such impact on your actions and your behaviors. So you want to kind of think about reshaping your mindset, acquiring a growth mindset, a mindset of abundance, like questioning yourself. Yes. Do you really think you know everything? Right?
No, that's why I'm having you here.
So when you can, humble yourself to the idea that maybe you don't know as much as you think you do know. And can you actually look at things from different perspectives? Do you have that as a skill? Is that something you practice regularly? And that will help you kind of start to get a good understanding of where you are in life. And then also I always say, you got to get a coach. You got to get someone who can look at you objectively, because we are our worst enemies. We are standing in our own way.
So many times, I think when we evaluate ourselves, we either think we're better off than what we are, or that we're worse off and we're playing the beat up game.
That's right.
The accuracy of having another lens on us is so valuable. I agree, Jake. A coach is critical. That's why I started in CrossFit, because you had a coach there. You had someone that was watching what you're doing and saying, I'm sorry, that form does not work with your elbows way out here. You need to keep them tucked here. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, we have blind spots, and I think that it's if you don't utilize the resources around you to better your life, well, you're really kind of doing yourself a disservice, because there's great resources out there, and you just got to learn what they are and go find them for yourself. And it may be an investment to some degree, but that is going to pay you back tenfold.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that's probably where people would want to start, is to start looking at this as a spiritual journey. Start looking at it as a way to detoxify yourself. Start looking at it as a way to opening up your mind, and start to really think about what are the possibilities, the unlimited possibilities.
I love that. I think the value of a coach goes without saying. But not every coach sees life the way that you do, or the way that I do, in terms of this holistic approach. When I went on your website, Jake, I just thought, where do you get this website? This is like freaking amazing. It's to transform your life and achieve the holistic lifestyle you desire. Sometimes people don't know that that's what they're looking for. But then you went on to list 6 steps, each one of them critical. Hydration, sleep. I was the person that wore a badge on my shoulder for so many years that said, "Hi, I get by on 4 hours of sleep a night. I must be amazing." Right? Until I realized that was aging me and killing me
right.
and not allowing me to attain my goals. Nutrition being such a huge part, and then exercise. But you've added to this what I don't see oftentimes on a physical fitness website, which is breathwork and meditation, which is now the bedrock of my life. And then the growth mindset. So I'm hoping that we have just enough time to go into each one of those steps just a little bit, and to have you kind of expand on what that is and the value for people in their lives.
Yeah, so homeostasis is really what we're looking at, is optimizing our homeostasis. It's our position of balance. So you want to think about all your systems in your body are being governed, through the nervous system. Right. And the main point of your homeostasis is to keep things working in a really good way. So if you are out of whack in your homeostasis, then you can look at it as things are going in the wrong direction. So, but there are things that you can do to just simply manage your homeostasis, and one of them is making sure that you stay hydrated, because dehydration can cause a lot of problems in your body. A lot of problems. It has issues with your digestive system, and then you have issues with your heart. Your blood is made from water, So it's there's so many systems in your body that are being governed by your hydration. So simply being dehydrated is going to cause an unnecessary stressor. So get optimal amounts of hydration. Of course, it's different for everyone, but the rule of thumb is 3 liters for women, 4 liters for men, or depending on your size, your body, of course, but you want to get clean water. You want to get good, clean water with good mineral content. Stay away from just just junk, like soda pops and all this unnecessary amounts of liquids we can put in our body that, you might be hydrated because you got some water content in some of these, but you're also bringing in all these other chemicals and all this other kind of stuff. So clean water is important. And then
it's the first thing I got rid of. Soda was the first thing I got rid of.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
when
not
you realize the moment I switched that soda to water was like this huge wake-up call. Suddenly my lips weren't dry.
That's right.
Suddenly my skin looked a little better. And instead of dehydrating me, what I was consuming was hydrating me. Yeah. Yeah. And I was I was a, twice a day, 32-ouncer kind of a go to the gas station girl.
Yeah, yeah.
It changed my life. You're absolutely right.
A lot of people are, So, and I think, of course you can have teas, you can have coffee, you can have all these other things, but make sure you're drinking good amounts of water, right? So I think that's important. And then next one, of course, is sleep. A lot of people they overestimate their sleep and they underestimate the value of sleep.
Or they overestimate how little they can get by on.
That's right. And it's almost like a badge of honor, And,
that's what I'm wearing my badge every day.
Yeah. They're afraid they're going to miss out on life, but you're missing out on life when you're tired because you're not functioning at 100%. So if you're functioning only at 80%, I mean, wouldn't you be getting so much more out of life if you were functioning at 100% versus 80%? Right. Yeah. So, that extra hour of sleep is going to add years to your life, you know? So you've got to think about sleep is your biggest bang for the buck when it comes to keeping you healthy, because it's the best way to recover from any sort of sicknesses, any sort of, stressors of any way. And it's a way of keeping your hormones in check. So it's, sleep is I'd say number one, and then of course, nutrition is a close, second, let's say.
Right.
Of course, nutrition is a lot more simpler than what people make it out to be. But it is, I think, important that, and I think it's one of the reasons why we have such a decline in our health as a whole, why people are dying younger, why people are getting sick younger, and there's a record number of people in diabetes and heart disease and all of these other things. And a lot of it is because our nutrition is so poor. And why is that? Why is it so poor? Well, it's processed foods. It's, people are not eating balanced meals. They're overeating. They're, and they're maybe unintentionally overeating. They don't even know what they're eating. So there's so much that goes into it. And I just say, you know what? You got this one life to live, and your nutrition, if you can get it on point, is going to serve you really well. And, and the sad part is I haven't lived, I'm going to be 60 in a couple of years. And I know my dad died at 68.
Wow.
Of a heart attack. And so I have family members that I've watched get really sick and pass away at a younger age than they needed to. And I've also got friends now that I've seen go into poor health unnecessarily. And so I always say, you should be scared to death. You should be scared to death about dying from something that you can correct, something you can correct right now. So, and that is nutrition. Nutrition, I think, is medicine for you. It does, you can use your food for medicine. So, single ingredient foods, lots of greens, good amounts of different colorful vegetables and fruits. And, and of course it's a lot more, I'm making it a lot more simpler than it needs to be, but it is a simple equation. But it's so complex when you think about what you have to do to live that way. You have to eliminate these foods that are causing you a lot of harm
absolutely.
Out of your life. It's like a toxic person. You don't want to have a toxic relationship with food. So you have to go no contact. You have to be like, look, I'm not gonna engage in this anymore. It doesn't mean you couldn't have like an occasional treat here and there. You know what I mean? But it's like it just gets to be a bit much. So I think that cleaning up your diet, it's going to boost your immune system. It's going to make you look younger, feel younger. It's going to contribute to your fitness. It's going to contribute to your health goals. It's going to contribute to longevity. You're going to look at yourself in the mirror in the future one day, and you're going to have that person look back at you, and they're either going to say, why'd you do that to me? Or they're going to say, you know what? Thank you so much for everything you did. You worked so hard to get here, and you did such an amazing job. I love you for that. Wouldn't you want that?
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
So I think
I'm already saying that to myself when I look in the mirror. Oh,
yeah, you should be.
You killed it.
You should be. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's what everyone needs to start thinking about, is living for their future self. Specifically, if you're over 50, you should be living for your future self and thinking about how you want to live those last 10 years of your life, and have a plan for how you want to live those last 10 years, and start thinking about how important those last couple of years will be and how you want to actually live, because what you're doing right now is going to have an impact on that. So I do think that, Dr. Attia, one of the guys I follow and I love dearly, is he's got a great book out, and he talks in detail about how important it is to have a 10-year plan, and because it makes you be
Right.
mindful. You're going to have to
Mindful.
answer to yourself someday down the road. So anyway, so that's nutrition. And then of course, exercise, I believe in full body functional exercise, but exercise also can become a big stressor if you're not balancing it correctly or doing it correctly for yourself or honoring where you're currently at. So you've got to, that's where I think it's important to, have a coach is when you get into exercise.
Yeah.
If you're not an exercise fanatic like I am, I've been exercising my whole life, but I still research exercise and science all the time, so
Yeah.
it's ever evolving and it's ever, it's always changing. So you have to stay on top of things. And then, breath work and meditation, I feel like are two things that are ignored the most, and they are extremely
Yeah.
potent, so I put them together because I believe that they go together. I think that anytime that you're focusing on your breath, it gives you a good opportunity to get into a meditative state. Not to say that you couldn't focus on your breath while you're at work or doing exercise or anything else, but I think that it provides a unique opportunity for you to get in touch with yourself, get in touch with your breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would probably say at least nearly 100%, probably 99% of us are hyperventilating and we don't know it. And so...
Or holding our breath.
That's right. And so
one or the other.
Breath, shallow breathing is a big problem. No one talks about it. No one really understands it really well. I studied it extensively, and it is something that I think people are missing out on as a way to keep their bodies calm, keep themselves in a good place mentally, and your breathing pattern, how much you breathe throughout every minute. You should only be breathing in a minute, maybe 3 to 4 times in and out. And so that's like a 3 to 4 second in breath, followed by a 3 to 4 second out breath. But you go anywhere and you just watch people breathe, just the average person, and they're breathing 16 to 30 times in a minute.
Absolutely.
In and out.
And
yeah.
I really extended that for me by actually practicing this, like that prana breath where I worked up to being able to breathe in for 20 seconds.
Yep.
And
Nice.
breathe out for 20 seconds.
Yep.
Now, I don't do that on a regular basis.
Right.
But by doing that practice every day,
Opens up
I
the
now
lungs.
absolutely, am 10 to 15 seconds regularly that I am breathing in a minute, as opposed to what I started off with, which was 5. Do you know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, most people have inverted respiration, right? So they're breathing up like that versus breathing out diaphragmatically, right? So you want to breathe out diaphragmatically, and so I think that that was one of the things that I learned early in my career, just from being a Czech practitioner, like I had mentioned, and being in the martial arts. In martial arts, that's how you stay grounded. If you are in a confrontation, you have to keep you're in a it's very scary to get into a confrontation.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So getting into your breath, getting yourself centered, getting yourself so you can think really clearly, understand things really clearly. And so I think that breathing, I had to bring breathing and meditation into the Morph Method just because I felt it was just too valuable to leave out. And then of course the last pillar is the growth mindset. And and I think we need to always think about evolving, especially if we are older, like they say. Carl.
I'm not old. I'm older. Yes.
Older. That's right. So Carl Jung had a he talked about individuation. Yeah. Individuation is like the first half of our life. We're chasing our goals. We're very ego driven. We're making a name for ourselves, getting ourselves set up. We're very physical, very into it, right? And then the second half of our life is so if we're pursuing with ego in our first half of our life, we are devolving. We are simply trying to dissolve our ego. Dissolve our ego in the second half of our life. So you want to evolve by dissolving your ego. So your life becomes more of a spiritual journey in the second half. And so we want to replace, this ego pursuit with wisdom. And so wisdom just comes from learned experience, and getting your ego out of the way and looking at, what can you do to preserve yourself, preserve your life, preserve your body. And there's no better way than to work on stress management. And I think stress management is where it all comes down to. Fitness to me is after 50, is stress management. So it's a tool for stress management. It is stressors, excessive stressors that prematurely age us. And so not to say you shouldn't have a good amount of good stress, but that good stress you had in your 30s is no longer good stress in your 50s or 60s or 70s. It's excessive stress. So you've got to know how to relax, get yourself into a good place. So things that were stressing you out mentally in your 30s, you shouldn't have, those things shouldn't be stressing you out any longer in your 50s and 60s.
Right.
Because you've learned from your mistakes. You've got all these life lessons that you can incorporate into your mindset, into your wisdom, so that you're not reactionary. You're more like, okay, I understand everything that's really going on by now. And I think a lot of us
that's the biggest thing that has shifted for me is not being reactionary, but being actionary.
That's right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's just that's one of the great things about evolving and continuing to evolve and fight against this idea that, well, I lived enough to know everything, I know what's going on with everything. I know, it's like that mindset. That mindset will definitely get in your way.
Yeah.
if you want to age gracefully. So aging gracefully is, I think, just it's trying to get into a youthful mindset of learning more about the spiritual side of life. So it's almost like you're reborn again into a new world to explore, which is an internal world. So we explored the external world already. We know what that's all about. So now let's go inward and let's start exploring our internal world, And so and I think the first thing I get out of your mind is that you know everything.
Yeah, I think it's so important to stay curious.
That's right.
And I listen to podcasts. I read books. I go to lectures. I attend retreats. All those things not because I want to show how much I know to everybody there, but because they have knowledge I don't have. Yep. And why people listen to my podcast is because if you're listening, that means you are acknowledging someone else may have a piece to my puzzle.
Always the nuggets of wisdom.
And you are full of nuggets of wisdom. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Jake. Listen, sweetheart, I'm going to, let's show your book. I want to buy your book. Sure. So put your book up.
Okay. So, it's the Morph Method. It is on Amazon. So you can just type in Morph Method, Jake Platt. It's on Amazon. It's the pathway to holistic wellness. So, it's to help people go from understanding health and wellness through a sick-based model and more looking at health and wellness through a holistic wellness model.
Wow, that's amazing. This episode is going to air in January. So nice, this is perfect. The perfect time for you to make these decisions. Am I all that I can be? And I think almost everyone who's listening, the people that listen to my podcast, they already know they haven't sung their last song. They already know that they have more to give. But sometimes they don't know how to sing their song. Or they're still looking at what song to sing. what do I have left to give in my life? And by reading these kind of books that have not only motivation, but have actual steps to take, really can begin to move the needle for people. I love that. And for all of you who are wondering about your nutrition for the new year, I always tell people, shop the exterior, the outside of your grocery store. Everything out there usually is good for you in the produce, vegetables, meat departments, dairy departments, eggs, those kind of things. If you have to venture into the middle of the dragon in the store, don't go in there without reading a label.
That's right.
Because those vegetables don't come with a label on them of all the stuff that's in them. It's,
That's
you know,
right.
you can go home and say, look, oh, this is what broccoli has. But if you go into the center of the store, you have to be a label reader. If you go to your freezer case, you have to be a label reader. But if you want to just make it easy, just stick to the outside. It's pretty easy.
That's right. That's what I do.
Jake, I hope that once I read your book and I'm delve into your website, would you come back and share with us some more detail about all of this?
Sure. I'd love to. Absolutely.
I kind of want to take the steps and get moving, and then I'm going to be full of questions, and I'd love to have you back.
Yeah, I'd love to. That'd be wonderful.
All right. Now, at the end of the podcast, listeners, we have Jake's website as well as the link to his Amazon book, so you can actually take this needle and let's begin to move it. Nobody wants you to eat the elephant today, but I do want you to begin to take those small bites that are going to move the needle. And I rarely have seen someone that has such a comprehensive program as what Jake has. And this could be a big deal for all of my listeners. Jake, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for being such a light. And I just want you to hold it high so that people can see you and know that there is a way and that you have so much knowledge for people. Thank you.
Appreciate that so much, Mary. Take care.
All right.
Thank you.
Everyone, please keep moving. This is about crafting your meaningful life, and you've got this. Namaste.
Crafting a meaningful life.